So hello everyone, and thank you for joining. I'm going to keep this slide up for about a minute, as it helps with the final video to put a title screen at the beginning of it. The brief introduction, some of you are new. I practiced traditional evolutionary astrology for about 13, 14 years. And my life really started changing a lot. And I have been kind of semi-underground for 3 to 4 years and going through a lot of change. And I am now emerging with my own perspective, which uses evolutionary astrology as its base, but it's also incorporating what my own experiences have been, which are very much about the topic, the title of this topic, about living life from the soul's perspective. Because even though evolutionary astrology is about the soul, the majority of we human beings at this time see ourselves as a personality and not as a manifest soul. Typically, we feel like I'm a person who has a soul. There is a perspective that I'm beginning to see of recognizing I am a soul who has created a persona for my own unfolding. I am now back to live video. So, and I am aware that the whole planet, all of us, are in essentially a waking up to our actual identity, our true nature as souls. And this is sometimes a very painful process. It can feel at times like death. It can feel very difficult at times because we are very identified as who I am as the personality. And as the soul is waking up or coming in, I'll backtrack for a second. For thousands of years now, the basic goal of spirituality has been to get out of here ASAP. What do I have to do to end this karmic cycle of coming back? That's what we have essentially been taught, that this is suffering and there's bliss and peace someplace else, and I want to get there as quickly as I can. So the tune is changing. The tune of the world, the purpose here is changing, because now it's not so much I want to get out of here as life, divinity, God, is wanting to descend into Earth, into our human forms. And this makes a lot of the past philosophies, paradigms, and so forth that we've had kind of obsolete. Now, this hasn't thoroughly caught on yet because the prevailing paradigms, philosophies, religions, orientations are pretty popular. In other words, that's what we know. That's what we've been taught. That's what we know. And so that's the idea of changing that, or that it's going to be different than that, actually is somewhat scary. I want to put up a slide here for a moment, which kind of says in a nutshell what I'm talking about. And as you can see, it says, when you're a soul, everything serves you. When you're an ego, it's like you're living a movie with an assassination plot. It feels like everything is out to get you. That's the part that to me right now is most important. The other part is when you are your soul, you are the personality of you are a personality of your soul, which it says here is the same as our breath. When you are your ego, you are the personality of an overstimulated nervous system. And to translate that into perhaps easier to follow, our nervous system, our fight or flight instinct, which is the base of trauma and fear and terror and anger and all this other stuff, is part of our what some people call reptilian brain. It's our survival system. And in the way I've learned to look at it, it's our nervous system. And when our nervous system is inflamed, then it causes us to get triggered and we move into places of old traumas. We find ourselves in old behaviors. We find ourselves sometimes surrounded by people who are behaving in ways that are triggering our old behaviors, including the ones that we have worked so hard to heal and think that we have perhaps moved beyond. And in a lot of ways we have, but it brings up more levels. I'll put it, I know well that feeling that this is some kind of assassination plot, or, I mean, that's a little extreme, but the point of it is that we're not safe here. That's the feeling. If I don't take care of myself, if I don't do it myself, I'm not safe here. And that's our inflamed nervous system. When we're coming from the perspective of a soul, and it's something one has to experience, because many of us, and the kind of people that are interested in the topics that I'm talking about, including things like soul-based astrology, tend to be very sensitive, empathic people with good hearts and sincere desires, not narcissists. And because of the sensitivity of our nervous systems and our whole nature, so it's easy for us to get triggered and feel fearful. Now, the way this has typically been approached for a long time, it's not that people say that that's bad or wrong, but it's more like we want to get over that. We want to get through that. We want to get out of that. And the part that's interesting that I have begun realizing is that when we're saying, I don't want that, and I want to get out of that, and I want to be done with that, we're actually rejecting those parts of ourselves. That's not our intention, but that's actually partially what we're doing. Now, when I speak like this, because most of us have been conditioned with very deep sense of right and wrong value systems and judgments and good and bad and all this from early childhood on, because we all grew up with parents pretty universally who had the same orientation. And so we got raised that way. And so we tend to feel, if I say something like, well, that's not really, there's another way of approaching that. I do it myself. It's very easy for me to start feeling inside like I'm doing something wrong, or I'm being told I'm doing something wrong, which makes me feel like a bad person. And then I have my habitual reaction to that, which in my case, perhaps it's more of a masculine tendency, has been to kind of get defensive. and push back. But as I begin to realize the reason I feel that is because I don't want to feel the feelings that are in me. No, those are feelings I'm talking about, like guilt and shame. If I'm like a very spiritually oriented person and I find that I have a lot of anger, and I have been taught that anger is not spiritual, then I may want to be in denial of my anger, or grief is not spiritual, or sadness is not spiritual, or jealousy is not spiritual. So if I have those emotions in me, which I will add, I see more and more are all because of wounds that I have, emotional wounds that I have. In other words, I can judge myself for being angry, for being jealous, for being sad, whatever, judgmental. But there's a basis for this. Most of us have learned in one form or another to judge ourselves for what we feel. And that, I see, is what the healing of that is to undo those tendencies. How do we undo them? By learning to love ourselves. If we've had spiritual experiences, we have experienced some way in some form that there's a really big love out there someplace. I might have peak experiences and feel that. The transition, the changes in realizing, oh my, those places are actually in me. But I'm not feeling that a lot of the time. I'm not feeling the loving part of myself or the divine part of myself. I'm just feeling, wounded emotions that a lot of the time that I don't like, or someone else sets off some emotions in me, and then I get mad at them because if they weren't there, I wouldn't be feeling this. But the gist of it is, if I'm feeling it, it's because those emotions are in me. It's not that somebody else is making me feel that way. It's that someone is behaving in a way that's bringing out of me feelings, emotions that I don't like to admit are there. I don't want to feel them. So what I'm seeing is that it's about changing my relationship with what I'm feeling. In my case, anger was not okay in the house I grew up in. I'll say it that way. So I was angry about stuff. And so I got labeled as angry. I'm beginning to see, in a lot of ways, I was actually carrying the unexpressed anger that was in the house that other people were not feeling. And it was all frustrating to me. And so I rebelled against it, or I didn't, being a kid, I have a Taurus moon. It's like, I want it kind of to go my way. It's like, if it's not going the way I want, I'm going to hold my breath until I turn blue. That did not prove to be a very effective strategy. But we all have remnants of this stuff. And what I've been realizing over the last 3 years or so from actually practicing it is that it is about the healing that we're seeking is through loving and accepting exactly where we are. This kind of sounds counterintuitive in certain ways. It's like, but that's exactly what I want to heal from. I don't want to feel that anymore. So the irony of it is that sort of the way to heal it, because there's a healing process and it's going to take as long as it's going to take. I'm not in charge of that, much as I might like to be. And the healing process is the more that I can accept, understand, and have compassion for the parts in me that are wounded. I don't necessarily have to like them. I don't have to like that I have a place that gets really angry. But if I tune into that angry part, and it's kind of like asking it, well, what do you need? Why are you angry? What do you need? What is it you're angry about? And I begin to understand that part. And like anybody we're relating with, we may have people in our lives that we have a difficult time getting along with, but I'm sure we've all had at least a few experiences of somebody that just really pushed my buttons. And then over time, getting to know them. And then I start to understand, I can start to see why they are the way they are. Then I have more compassion for them. I care about them. It doesn't mean I necessarily want to be around them a lot. They do push my buttons. But I can, instead of making them the enemy that I want to push away, I can understand what in their life or how they got to be the way they are that upsets me. Then my relationship with that begins to change. It's a similar thing internally. If I was guilted a lot as a child, then and I'm sensitive, then I have ingested that there's something wrong with me, because that's essentially what was being said to me. So I have taken on that voice internally. Now, because I was rejected for having those parts. So am I going to like those parts in myself? No, I see them as the part that make people not like me. Do I want to parade that around? Not really. But that's the problem. Because there actually never was anything wrong with those parts or my being angry. I'm using anger as one example of an emotion. It can be any range of things. I don't like that part of myself because of the way I experienced people reacted to me when I showed that part of myself. But there was nothing wrong with that part of myself. I just came to believe there was. So part of this healing is making peace with, making friends with places in ourselves that are traumatized, that are triggered, that we don't like, that annoy other people. That in forming relationship with them, because those are parts that are carrying guilt and shame. They feel bad about themselves. And the healing, like us, if I'm feeling, say you have a partner and you're feeling guilt and shame, and you interact with that partner, and example one, the partner is responding to you exactly like you're familiar out of childhood, guilting and shaming you for feeling guilt and shame. You're going to have a certain reaction. Option number two, the partner is able in their own healing to say, oh, honey, I understand how you feel, and you're really okay. It's okay that you're feeling what you're feeling. It's okay that you felt bad about something you did. You didn't do anything wrong. This is a different experience altogether than what I'm used to. This heals the inflamed nervous system and actually starts opening up new paths and channels in the brain that are more whole and loving, self-loving. So whether or not we have an external partner, we have an internal partner, ourself. You can call it our adult self, you can call it our soul. It's a part, it's like the parent that we can parent children and love children. Well, these are our own child places that are still in us, that are unresolved, unhealed. And it's through holding them and literally have to practice, because the unconscious attitude is to reject them. And it's literally having to change behaviors, change habits to develop love for self. And it comes down to, sometimes we can't. And then it comes down to, I cannot today love the part of myself that is angry, is the angry person. And then it becomes, okay, then love the one that can't love that angry part. In other words, there are reasons why we have the wounds we have. We're not bad, we're not wrong, we're not screwing it up. And we want to connect with those parts of ourselves. Now, all of this is the perspective of the soul. Because from the soul perspective, everything in life is here to help us and serve us, including the most painful, difficult, almost unbearable circumstances. It's all here for our growth. None of it is our bad karma. None of it is us being punished by life or God for what we did or didn't do. That's all the old way of looking at it. It is not that. As we're able to move increasingly into the perspective of realizing that everything that happens, whether I like it or can't stand it, is here to help me grow, evolve, become a more loving person, then it's easier to persevere through very difficult circumstances. Sometimes, oftentimes, the very difficult circumstances are because it's an effective way to break down conditioning that we have that keeps us separated from the next level or next chapter in our lives. And, I have been using childbirth as an example. Obviously, I haven't given birth to a child, but I, have been present at several. And, as I put it, I've asked women about it, and I have yet to have a woman tell me that she had fun during childbirth. But after childbirth, all this stuff comes that's really, while challenging at times, is rewarding and significant. And without the inconvenience or the pain or the fear or whatever of the process or of the actually birthing, what comes after that will not happen. So I'm using this as a metaphor, because in life we are continually being rebirthed. And every time we're being rebirthed, that's transits. Every time we're being rebirthed, it's actually a graduation. We don't look at it that way. Often we don't. We tend to look at it as loss, because who I am, what I know, whatever, is being taken away. But it's being taken away. The realization grows. It's being taken away because we have mastered, we have learned the lessons, the growth that's possible from those circumstances. And that's why it's going away. We're being, sometimes I have said, how many times do I want to go through the third grade? At a certain point, I have learned it. And then it's time to move on. Now, that can be scary because, as I like to put it, nobody's sending out an email telling you that, hey, a whole lot in your life is about to change, and you're going to have what you experienced as some loss. That to me is one of the big values of astrology, because it's kind of like, it can be like the missing email that's saying, hey, get ready for this because it's going to change. Now, what we live in a culture that has basically taught most of us, most people have been raised from day one with an underlying unspoken attitude that everything is hard and you want to hold on to everything you have because you never know that it's going to come again or that anything better is going to come along. And so we resist and we hold on. So the gist of it, when looking at the perspective of the soul, at least my perspective on it, is the soul is eternal. It's like a little breath or spark of the eternal divinity. It is, as the Hindus say, it can't be stained. It had no birth. It has no end. It's eternal. It goes on and on. We can't, and in a human body on earth, we can't even conceive of what that means, really. But it's like a whole different take on life, that because we fear endings, the big ending we fear, or many of us fear, is death. Oh my God, I'm going to die. But death is not really death. It's like graduation. I have learned what I came here to learn and do in this one lifetime, and I'm now going on to something that's going to be like the next grade. I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep learning. But we're surrounded by fear around death because we don't understand it, because most people, most of us, including me, identify ourselves with our personality, with our ego. So living life from the perspective of the soul is realizing everything has an expiration date. Stuff you hate, it's going to end. Stuff you love, it's going to end. That's just the way life works. Because it's not really here for the things in our life are not really here for our enjoyment. And what I mean by that is not that we should suffer or that, live in pain or, have the nose to the grindstone thing. What I mean is everything in our life is here for us to help us understand more about who I am, who I really am. And that's why it ends. Because at a certain point, I've learned what's possible from that circumstance. There's not really any predicting of it. Some people are going to be in a marriage for 2 years, and some people are going to be, rightfully so, in a marriage for 72 years. And there's not really a way to know. But whatever comes our way is for us to learn. And as we can move into making that more than a mental concept, but through actually seeing life through the eyes of the soul, which is everything is here to help me. I'm in great pain, something really bad bad to me just happened. How is that here to help me? Answer, at this point in time, you can't know that. And that's not a defect in you. But it's a knowing which is not faith, it's just experience over time. I mean, as we get older, we can look back at things that have occurred 5, 10, 15 years ago that were really difficult and go, oh my, now I see sort of what I gained from that very difficult experience. I have some that I can say, I would not be who I am, the person I am, without certain experiences I've had that really weren't fun. I have one or two that, made me wish I wasn't here. Then, of course, we also have, wonderful, pleasing, pleasant, and meaningful and significant experiences. But I'm talking more about the other ones because I don't hear too many people complaining about their wonderful, pleasant experiences. Let me go back to my notes here. Yeah, I came up with things come to me sometimes in terms of explaining things in cute metaphors, and one of them I've said this a lot. This just came to me within the last month, and it's very relevant for evolutionary astrology because we're Pluto astrology, and it's about metamorphosis. Metamorphosis. The example EA gives for metamorphosis is caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. Caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. Caterpillar's turning into butterfly. Awesome. So my cute little saying is, I've been hearing about this all my life. It was only 2 weeks ago I realized the part that nobody had ever told me. When that caterpillar is in that cocoon, it is probably screaming at God. It's not, these transformations are not necessarily fun because everything we know about, I won't say everything, but so much of what we know about who I am, what I'm doing, what I'm supposed to do, where I've been, who's my family, what's my job, what's my career, all this. It's all or lots of that can just suddenly start fading away. Now, who is prepared for that? Not very many of us. And yet, that's what happens in life, right? Again and again and again. That can't be a mistake. We've been trying to write it off to bad karma for 5,000 years. I don't see it as bad karma anymore. These are actually gifts. They're just gifts that are difficult to understand sometimes at the time that they occur as to how it's a gift. That comes later. That we call integration of the unknown into the known. And out of that comes wisdom. Wisdom is when we understand a process or a flow that we didn't and couldn't understand before, and we went through it to gain that understanding. I didn't know I was going to talk about this until a couple of hours ago, but felt like I'm supposed to do this. So my partner, Diane, has been really liking this woman named Tosha Silver. And Tosha is an astrologer, or still is, an astrologer who did 30,000 readings. And she stopped doing readings, and she does a lot more work now along the lines of the way that I'm talking, which I would call integrating the lessons, the teachings of astrology. How do I live them in my life? How do I change my life? And I want to read this, which will probably take about 2 minutes. This is, and one reason that I'm bringing this up is most of the people that are on these talks are female. And Tosha is very much, I can talk about this stuff in my way, but Tosha is very much a feminine perspective. And I've found with some women that I find a lot of women really, it's good to get also the perspective from a woman rather than, I asked a long time ago, why is it that 80% of the people that study astrology are female and 80% of the people who teach astrology are male? And, my answer, I asked this to a kind of well-known female astrologer. And she said, what do you think? Um, so that's my point. This is called Tosha's abundance prayer. And she reads this every morning and she recommends it. And it says simply, Divine Beloved, allow me to give with complete ease and abundance, knowing you are the unlimited source of all. Let me be an easy, open conduit for your prosperity. Let me trust that all of my own needs are always met in amazing ways, and it's safe to give freely as my heart guides. And equally, please let me feel wildly open to receiving. May I know my own value, beauty, and worthiness without question. Let me allow others the supreme pleasure of giving to me. May I feel worthy to receive in every possible way. Change me into one who can fully love, forgive, and accept myself, so I may carry your light without restriction. Let everything that needs to go, go. Let everything that needs to come, come. I am utterly your own. You are me, I am you, we are one. All is well. And that last, see, to me, this is a practice that can help move us towards experiencing life from the soul's perspective. Because in that perspective I just read, is still, okay, well, I'm a human and I'm moving towards realizing all of this is for the good of myself and for the good of everyone else. And that is the process. We don't need to be there one moment sooner than we naturally get there without pushing ourselves to evolve, to meditate, to this, to that. It's that in we need a lot of rest time. We need a lot of down time. We need a lot of healing time. We need a lot of integrating time. This is part of healing our wounds. This is nurture that giving ourselves brings us to the places that we wish to go. Our traumatized parts need time, space, and love to heal. And it's a process. I also want Tosha has a new book out, which is supposedly about abundance. And it's called It's Not Your Money, which basically means that everything that we have is not ours personally. In other words, we're kind of loaned or given what's in our life. Not that we have to give it back next year, but that it's not so much when we start getting clear about it, it's not so much that it's in my life, I made it and I can do what I want with it. It's kind of like, okay, life, what is it you would like me to do? What is it you want me to do? How can I help? How can I serve? That's what It's Not Your Money means. And apparently most of the book, or a whole major theme of this book, is about worthiness. Because it is, it's not like when I feel worthy, I'm suddenly going to have $5 million, because that's not really, past a certain point, that's not the point. People pursue money, fame, material success and all this in a lot of cases. Some people it's a calling, but in a lot of cases, they're trying to fill a void inside. And in our society, that's the way that's been set up to do that. You just get stuff. And then you need to hold on to it because you start fearing you're going to lose it. That's why it's not your money, it's not my money. And the worthiness is about, for many of we spiritually oriented people, we don't necessarily feel we want to serve and we want to help in all this, and we doubt and we question if I'm even worthy enough to receive what's already coming to me. And that's not bad. And the idea that if I am too unworthy, you know, this law of manifestation stuff, law of attraction stuff, it's not like if I think I'm so unworthy that I'm going to be pushing away all the benefits that life wants to bestow on me. That's superstition. Whatever is going to happen in our life is part of our script, and it is going to happen. No matter what we do, it's going to happen. And this is written in our transits. In other words, if I'm going to have a big Pluto transit when I'm 52, it's going to happen. If I become a billionaire and the biggest philanthropist in the world, I'm still going to go through the changes. It's part of our script. If I'm the biggest creep in the world, we're still going to go through the changes. It's part of the script. So at that, Sarah, are you around? Let me unmute you. Let's see, where's the thing for participants here? There. Unmute.
Hi.
Hi. So we're going to talk with Sarah first because Sarah, of the 3 volunteers, is the youngest volunteer. And she's, I want to put your chart up for a few minutes. I don't know, actually, I don't want to put your chart up. I want to put, but I also want to see you, and I also want us to have the conversation. So briefly,
Okay.
Sarah grew up in a difficult home with parents who had a lot of difficulties in their life. And so she was subjected to various patterns, and she broke away from that at age 15. So she's had a life that's had a lot of, you know, what I call being thrown back on yourself, and having to learn how to be responsible and take care of self. Actually, here's where I want to put the chart up. Okay, let's see how do I do this? Let me get the chart open, because here we'll do a little astrology. Okay, so having a life of, it's hard not being able to see anyone. Having a life of being thrown back on self to be self-reliant. We have Chiron in the 2nd house, along with in Cancer. We see that Sarah is coming from a South Node in Leo and Moon. And I would say this means, and Sarah is a Pluto Scorpio, 6th house. But with a South Node Leo with the Moon on South Node, Sarah from this has had a past where she has learned how to create and generate for herself. Does that fit?
Yeah.
It's like you're born with this knowing or memory. And in fact, she also has Saturn in Capricorn. I would actually say, I mean, did you have feelings when you were growing up, like, what am I doing in this space?
Oh my, all the time. From the time I was little, I never felt like I really fit into where I was. And that's kind of been like an ongoing experience in my life.
Mm. And, you know, I would say looking at this, that there's a good likelihood that part of the reason for this life is wanting to learn some, what am I going to say? To kind of smooth some edges on a
Mm,
moon south node Leo, to bring in some um, difficulties that can create humbling sort of experiences at times.
yeah, I definitely feel like that's the case because like growing up, not only did I feel like very rejected and I've dealt a lot with isolation and being bullied and things like that. It's like going through all of that, it definitely did humble me to where it's made me like a lot more compassionate. I'm learning to be more compassionate with myself, but that's been like the hardest thing. But it's allowed me to be more compassionate towards a lot of other people. And it's like maybe, you know, I wouldn't be that way if I hadn't gone through like all of that rejection, like all of that um, being alone. Like a lot of it was just being alone and having to, like you said, generate for myself. And I had to generate so much like strength from like within, and I became like a lot more spiritual to just get me through. And like you were saying, there was times when you felt like you didn't want to be here. Like I've had a lot of times like that as well. And it's getting through it. Like I still struggle sometimes, but getting through it, it does really like you do literally grow. Like you feel yourself actually grow. Like it's crazy.
Yes,
Um,
yes. And that here, let me unshare for the moment. Um, and that's what I would call, the way you just described that is what I would call seeing it from the soul's perspective.
mm,
That some of the experiences we have to go through are not ones that a human being would pick. If we,
right.
in the culture that we live in, where you know, basically we're supposed to, as much as we can, be having fun and happy all the time. And but when, from the soul's perspective, the whole reason that I'm here at all, is to learn and
Mm,
to express the divinity and to learn more deeply uh, who I am, and also through doing this, um, you know, through I my feeling is that the more that I and any of us are able to love ourselves more deeply and more deeply and more deeply, we're making a humongous contribution to the planet Earth and to
yeah.
all the pain that exists on the Earth. Just in our own home, in our own space, on our own time,
Hmm.
through not rejecting, but through accepting and loving. And that this is the healing that over long periods of time will change life on the planet.
Yeah.
Even from the perspective of we are certainly heading for some ecological difficult times that are going to drastically change life on Earth. But even that, you know, we want to get into labeling things as good and bad, and, you know, those stupid humans or those stupid Republicans or whatever. You know, can't they see that this is going to happen? Dum, 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 dum. So the answer is they don't know, they don't want to see. And then there's people, there's those of us that see and oh my God. And there's, but even with this, the point is, even on this massive scale, nothing can happen that's not intended to happen. Now, this starts off as a belief, you know, it's like, and I don't mean it as a new religion. I don't want anyone to walk around starting to think nothing can happen that isn't supposed to happen just because somebody said so. I learned this from the inside out over a period of time. But the phrase all is well has become very important to me. It is not something that was in my life at all. I would have like kind of sneered at that for a long, long time. But all truly is well. It doesn't mean it's fun. That doesn't mean we're going to have wonderful, loving outcomes in all ways, at all. But each one of us is having our own subjective experience. As I heal, we're having a big thing where I live with homeless people or transient people that are starting to congregate here. Now, I live in a very progressive place which truly is, progressive, spiritually oriented, mainstream place. But even here, we've got what they call the not in my backyard syndrome going on. And it's not one-sided. These are not easy issues. And it's like the issues that are coming on the planet are not easy. There's no quick answers, and nobody's right and nobody's wrong, and nobody's going to get everything they want, because some kind of compromises are going to have to happen. Even in our country, say, between Democrats and Republicans, and past a certain point, it doesn't work. You're moving towards this. I bring it up because to me, these are the energies of this time. And because each of us has within us our own version of this internally. We have we've got the two sides. Because they're not right or wrong. It's like we need both of them. And what we need to figure out is, how do you handle the paradox, both sides of a paradox, in a way that is functional? Because otherwise, we typically push the side that we don't like into our shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And then we tend, the way the shadow works is we tend to start projecting our shadow onto other people. So, for example, if I have unresolved anger in me, I can start, in my case, I can start pushing that onto conservatives. And it's one thing to not agree with a viewpoint, that's fine. But it's another thing to be blaming externally what's going on. And that's what we have at this point, is a whole lot of finger pointing. So this is rejected parts to me. And part of our own healing and of our own trauma is accepting all these parts that are in myself. I have places in me that are not aligned to the things that I'm most passionate about wanting to be aligned with. And it's hard to admit that at times. We see all kinds of examples of this. The extreme examples are, among extreme examples are stuff like sexual abuse of children by religious people in religions. I mean, or people that are very much opposed to same-sex marriage being discovered that they're same-sex people. This is shadow. And it's why? Because we have shame about all this stuff, because we've been taught that it's wrong and bad. But I like to say if 7 billion people all have something, it can't be a mistake. But in our culture, in our ways, we've been taught that there are these rights and wrongs. And I have to unwind the rights and wrongs within myself. That's the perspective of the soul. I get to be any way I want to be, choose to be, but I also have to respect everyone else's right and even intention to be whoever they are. The people that I think are, oblivious, unconscious, I see they need to be where they are. If we're on a planet that's going to make a gigantic ecological mess, it's because there's a whole lot of souls on this planet that need that experience. There will be ramifications to it for a very long time. But if it happens, it's a necessary experience in the overall evolution. Now, I want to add to this that to me, there are many of us here, like type of people that come to talks like this and study astrology, that there are many of us that are here that came here to want to help, not just to live our personal, independent little lives, which is, the mainstream thing. I have my family and we go on vacation and we have fun and we go to the mall and that's like, and I go to work and, my kids are going to a good college, all this kind of stuff. That's all great. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's many of us that are not here for that. That's not why we're here. And conditioning has made us try to conform to that, which is why we can feel bad about ourselves, sometimes lifelong. Because if you never felt like you fit in that from the time you were little, that might be because you're not supposed to fit in that. You can't fit in that. I just want to say a little more about Sarah, because Sarah came out of very difficult circumstance. She had some painful experiences after she left home, and she's turned this around. She's now gotten a good paying job at a bank for 8 years that is allowing her to live independently, went on vacation. First time she's traveled in her whole, out of the immediate area in her whole life, which is awesome.
Thanks.
It's amazing. You are coming up to your Saturn return. Do you know about this?
Oh, geez.
What? No, it's not bad.
I'm a little nervous about it because things were so rough. Like when I turned 27, things were really, really rough. And I'm thinking to myself, if it gets worse than how it was, I don't even know if I can. But yeah, I know of the Saturn return. I don't really know what to expect, I guess.
We're going to reframe Saturn return for you. We're going to reframe it and take the fear out of the picture. And
Okay.
I just lost my thought that I had. I have a transit chart for you here, so I want to open that up so we can get. Actually, I don't have this in the transit chart, but Sarah has Saturn at 19. Actually, I want to put this transit chart up because she's got the big transit going on big time.
Oh, man.
But that's good. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out how to get this shared. Okay, so the big transit to me is this one, which is the Pluto-Saturn South Node conjunction, and which to me is transforming the entire planet, whether
Mm-hmm.
or not the entire planet wishes to be transformed. And that this is coming, you know, essentially you're going to have Pluto right on your Saturn at the same time that Saturn is having the Saturn return. And where you can
Mm-hmm.
this, I look at I look at the first Saturn return as the transition between childhood and adulthood. Like late 20s where you are, to me is like transitional time
Mm-hmm.
where the person is moving towards it, and something happens at that point, and it often takes a few years on the other side of it. But let me talk for a moment here about my own experiences, because this is up for me right now. So on Sunday, I turned 70 years old.
Happy birthday.
It's May 26th. I don't, thank you. I don't know, and I noticed, and so when I turned 60, I was in a state of shock, and I walked around for 2 weeks going, how did this happen? um, I have to say that because of the way I look at things now, this feels like an amazing transition. And I want to put it this way, because this came to me the other day. Because the body slows down, definitely does. And so you know, the attitude in our youth-oriented culture is kind of like, well, that's a drag, and can't do what you were doing in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And what came to me on Sunday was, that's true. I can't do what I was 20, do what I did in my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. But you know what? Now I can do what I couldn't do in my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, because I have reached around the cycle long enough that things start to congeal, that so many of the experiences I've had in my life that seemed like they didn't make any sense together, they had nothing to do with each other, like pieces in a jigsaw puzzle. The jigsaw puzzle is starting to assemble itself. And I see why this happened and that happened and that happened, and how I wouldn't be who I am if this, that, and the other thing hadn't happened, and what it has given me from having it happen. And some of it wasn't fun, but it's amazing. And this, to me, I see, is more of looking at life from the perspective of the soul. Because the amazing thing is, there aren't really 10-year chunks in life, but we kind of recognize them that way because of the relativity of how we live. Because things change. I guess you could say, actually, if I want to, because the Saturn return is just under 30 years, so it's essentially, there's like, if you can have 3 10-year periods in your Saturn return, in that sense, that might make a little sense. But the gist of it is that there are archetypes. We have a life plan. I've become convinced of this. We have a soul plan. We come in with a soul plan. The baby has a soul plan. We forget the soul plan. We're not aware of the soul plan, but we have it. And whatever happens to us happens. It's why, you know, there's a giant battle going on and 20 people die and 280 live. Why them? In the plan. From the human perspective, we don't know why. We can guess. Maybe somebody really sensitive can get an inkling of it. I guess that's your Akashic record stuff if you're really looking at that. But mostly we have to live this out. We're intended to live it out day to day to day to day to day. And as we go through all this stuff, the pieces start coming together. And the amazing part about it is it goes on until our last breath, whether that's at 52, 77, 91, or 114. we're not stopping. Our culture tells us that, well, there's nothing you can do when you get to that age, you know. I mean, I've seen in, you know, old where people are like home, people are, and they're just sitting around kind of doing nothing, or, you know, playing games and stuff and bored out of their minds. Because our culture has so detached us from our essential nature, we don't realize there's something there for us every moment when there's no longer. There was a great, well, quote I love back in the 70s. Richard Bach had a book called Illusions about this stuff. And one of the quotes in there I've always remembered is, here's how to tell if your mission on Earth is complete. If you're still here, it's not.
Yeah.
And, oh, okay. Linda's telling me that I got to do the other charts. I see. So let me, I have Karen, and I'm sorry to cut this short. I have Karen on here next. Let me,
Steve, it's fine. You can take extra time. It's okay.
all right. I was planning on going an hour and a half. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So we have about approximately 15 minutes for each for Karen and Gloria. Let me find, I'm going to.
I unmuted myself.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm gonna mute Sarah and get this thing out of my way so I can see you. Where are you, Karen? Oh, here. Okay. Hi. Well, Karen says, I'm going to summarize what Karen said. She retired a few years ago, left a partner of 10 years and his chaos. She thought she was sailing neatly across Pluto conjunct her moon. You were, you just maybe didn't know it. It might not have felt like that. And can I share the big, yes. She had a son who died suddenly. This was 5 months ago, just before Christmas. He had a severe disability since birth. And even though he was being taken care of, she, of course, felt responsible. She's stating that responsibility has been her big R, and with employment and raising 2 boys and previously being married. And ironically, her son passing has given her a sense of freedom, and she doesn't quite understand what that's all about yet. And she, like so many of we caring people, feels a huge sense of the world's suffering and ignorance. And she's been aware since age 9 of the greater reality, and sees how wonderful we can make this world. And it's difficult to witness what we don't. You know, I said to a friend of mine about a month ago, who she does a lot of social stuff, abuse, sexually abuse, assault. And she was, you know, expressing her frustration with how people don't understand and don't meet their commitments and all that. And it came to me and I said to her, you know, you're kind of a teacher. You want to teach people how to heal themselves and live in a more holistic way. And if we were in a world where everybody already knew that, they wouldn't need any teacher. And it's like, that's what I realized from this. It's like part of the contribution it's a gift, it's a contribution that we make through being willing to take on and deal with stuff. And it's maddening sometimes, you know. Just had this conversation yesterday. It's like, well, you know, there may be a place for like getting a bunch of old plates and throwing them at a brick wall. And that's not unspiritual. What would be unspiritual would be taking out that frustration on people who don't know what they're doing, don't realize that they're acting frustrated. But we have not only the right, but the necessity to feel our own emotions and to learn to be okay with them. Because a lot of this for a sensitive person at times is really hard to take. And that's not I experience that's not a fault. It just is. It just is. And we made the choice. I want to help. I want to get in there and help. And sometimes I have called out a "what was I thinking" moment. but I find a little humor now and then helps the medicine go down. Karen says after grieving and being in shock, she's working hard at creative projects for herself and others, music, helping to organize events. She really wants to be at home alone in peace without having to answer to anyone else, contrasted with my external excursions. And I say to that, I hear you loud and clear. I have very little, personally, I have very little interest in mundane or consensus conversations. I recognize more and more we're all living out patterns and behaviors, regardless of how aware we are, and that there is a divine presence. I'm aware of the fragility of life in the body. I feel intensity almost all the time. I think and reflect on death. To fully live is to behold and embrace life and death. And let me get your chart up here on my computer so I can look at this. So Karen, I'll put her chart up shortly, but Karen has Pluto right on her ascendant, first house, conjunct Jupiter, both in Leo. South node 10th, Gemini, conjunct Mercury. North node 4th in Sag. She has Saturn in Scorpio in the 4th house, and she has a Capricorn moon at 18, which is again right where that transit's going on. That's exactly where the South node is right now. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so you're Saturn in Scorpio and feeling intensity all the time and reflecting on the reality of death. Hello. Especially in the 4th house. But to me, this is a good thing, a really good thing. It's the kind of thing that, you know, people go, oh, excuse me, I have to go clean my nails now. But this is an intensity within a soul. And it's to me, it's a very beautiful thing. It's not wanting to miss anything. It's interesting that you have Gemini. Oh, that's 10th house. I'm sorry. 1 second. What sort of work have you done?
Working with children. Yeah, early childhood education, so preschools and daycares. Family support worker. Also working in the arts as a program developer, coordinator. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. You know, I mean, I just, you know, I wanted to say what stuck out a little bit for me, that the grieving, um, really has its own requirements, and it, it's not quick. I think you know that, so I'm not wanting to say too much about it, but it has a life of its own, and it's part of the release. Let me see. Let me look at your transit chart, because maybe I want to put that up. Let me see. Yeah, let's put that one up. Because again, that whole Pluto Saturn South Node is occurring on our moon. This, you know, Pluto on your moon is enough in itself. When it's Saturn and South Node at the same time, it's like, you know, that's having taken on a major transformation. And that's what's going on. That's what's going on. People with Pluto in the first have a special, that's the way Jeffrey Wolf Green taught it, a special mission or purpose. And you have it literally right on your ascendant. And you would feel that deeply in your soul. And this is part of it, you know, the freeing of responsibility. You know, it's a hard one, because a mom loving a child so much and having watched the child go through so much, and yet then all of a sudden that's over.
Yeah.
Out of the blue.
Yeah.
And I just would say to that cannot occur. From the soul perspective, these things work both ways. Your son had his own reasons he needed to go, which we don't know offhand. And your soul had its own reasons that it was time, not that it was time for him to go, that it was time for you to be directed in other directions.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that sense, I mean, I would imagine, you know, you're feeling like that that feeling of new sense of freedom with Capricorn moon. I mean, have you felt some guilt about that, feeling that way?
Well, maybe at first, because so much of my life has involved concern for him. Pretty much every day, every moment of every day, I always felt like, is he okay? Am I, you know, fulfilling my role as, I guess, kind of overseer, or making sure he's safe in whatever situation he's in. And so I think I felt like for quite a while, kept looking around me going, isn't there something I should be doing? Shouldn't I be doing this or that? But what I really noticed in the days soon after his passing, because I'm aging, and for me to have visits with him and to accommodate him to see family, I'm kind of the one that's been doing that. So I've been really, I had been really concerned about keeping myself together and staying really healthy and physically flexible for as long as I could, so that I could facilitate that. And as soon as he was gone, I just had the stark realization that it was his life I was clinging to. Okay, I'm going to tell this story then. Remember, I wrote in my email that there was a shock that happened around his death, as well as his death, and it's just mind blowing. About 9 hours before he died, I was having, I guess, an afternoon nap, and I was waking up at 2:30, and I just was really feeling the burden of physicality being embodied, just that whole profound heaviness of the physical. And that accompanied with this ongoing concern for him all the time for the last 38 years. I called out with great vigor and intention, and I don't know where it came from. It was profound, right out into the universe. I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And God, if not 9 hours later, he was gone. Now, what? Like, how does that even happen?
What I would say,
Like, is that Pluto on the moon or what? You know, like, it's just, oh, you know, you don't get a powerful, I don't know, soul kind of slap in the face than that, right? It's like so shocking. So shocking.
Yes. I think that was a knowing in your soul that was true for you. I do.
I mean, it's like the contract was ended.
Exactly.
He left, and then I had the realization that I was clinging on to his life for me, so that I would stay on the planet, right? Well, I'm here, I'm staying on the planet, you know, so that you can have a happy life. Well,
Yes.
that's not a good way to do a contract, and that's the lesson. That was a huge lesson for me.
And thank you. Gloria, are you able to stick around? Okay, I will talk to you. I don't know whether we'll end the meeting and talk to you, or I'm just going to stay here and talk to you. Yes, that's pretty profound. But see, in certain ways, I'm not really surprised to hear that coming from you, because you're close to your soul, the awareness, and that was coming out. And the thing with all of this, I don't know if you have any sense of it, but that was what you just described is what I would call a fated event. You didn't cause that to happen. You didn't cause him to leave. It was the moment when that was going to occur, and your soul was tuned into that. And that's what was calling out. And that's how we can go through some of these really intense experiences. Now, we still have to integrate that. And that's what the grieving is, because it's integrating the emotions that are the residue of the 38 years and your time before you had your son. But this being integrated into the new reality that's coming to you. And that new reality in your chart is typified by that transit. Pluto, Saturn, South Node. You are being reworked and you are being released, and having that Pluto first house. I mean, this could take, the integration and the movement could take 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to take 5 years. I'm saying,
Yeah.
But because you're being moved to something very different altogether. And you're being prepared for that. And part of it is the accepting and the integrating of all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a part of his energy being released was me going through a release at the same time, because we're just so connected, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It was his soul time to be here in that circumstance that he was in. I'm sure it wasn't fun for him. Was ending, and
Yeah.
your role being the caregiver and guardian of this was ending, and your soul knew this, and that's
Yeah.
why you called out.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can feel this stuff when we're really sensitive. We can feel it coming. We can. That part of what I'm learning is to have the awareness of timing, meaning not everything I feel is intended to happen right now. I may be feeling things that are going to happen in 3 years, 10 years, or in 2 lifetimes. But everything I'm feeling is going to happen. That's why I'm feeling it when it's coming from that deep. Linda, is there any reason
Steve,
is there any
you
reason
can go on.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. I'm just
Go
going to,
ahead.
do I need to end the meeting at 6 o'clock?
Do you want to do Gloria for
I'm
10 minutes?
going to stay on here with Gloria after the meeting. So I want to know if
Okay.
I should end the
Well,
meeting.
Wanda and I are happy to stay for another 10 minutes, if that's okay. If
Oh,
you wish, or
no, absolutely. You can stay. I'm recording this too.
lovely.
So,
Yes. Oh, great. Yes. Okay, we'll use your recording. So if
yeah,
you can carry on, and
I'm
I may
recording.
have to leave for the next meeting, so you carry
I
on. Yes.
understand. Yeah, I understand.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Anybody else who has to leave, feel free to leave. And if you want to stay, that's great. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
So Gloria is the mother of 1 son and 1 grandson, and life partner to a man she loves and has been with for 26 years. Worked for the government and human services for over 30 years. She came in with all sorts of skills: art, mediums, gourmet cooking, organic gardening, food preservation, sewing. Believes in the healing power of spirit, humans, earth, and her wonderful plant life. Lives in Oregon. Me too. Even as a very small child, I searched for meaning. I grew up in an extremely violent, abusive, fear-filled home. I became very intuitive and psychic abilities at a very young age. Since I was 3 years old, I could see into the heart of others, their pain, their goodness, sometimes their darkness, their intentions and feelings. I often had the feeling we were going through life ignoring who we really are. In adolescence and early life, I experienced many more acts of violence, violation, and harm. I searched, sometimes desperately, outside myself for meaning, had powerful experiences, but always a feeling of emptiness and badness. I sensed protective energies around me and often received astounding validations. 20s through 40s, she sort of stopped pursuing spirit. In other words, she was living a normal life, which is often normal. Still read, still had guidance, never thought of herself as psychic, never even told anyone about her experiences and skills until 52, and told her husband and son, and then a few other friends. Mostly I felt weird about these experiences in regards to others knowing about them. I've never felt like I fit in. I was different, not in a good way. I thought it was part of my flawed and damaged self that I was ashamed and hid from others. I believe deeply I did not deserve these beautiful spiritual experiences or the skills and gifts that came in with me. I went to counseling for years, took drugs for depression, but little changed my sense of feeling bad or something was wrong with me. During what she now knows as a Chiron return, she started feeling depressed and started experiencing deep grieving for life and earth. Hopelessness was constant. But this time I was drawn to focus more inward to answers to my suffering. I became more sensitive and aware of toxic relationship energies. I made changes, but that was stressful because those closest to me didn't understand my need for the change, and I wasn't sure where I was going with them. I searched for things to help me feel better, was doing guided meditation. At some point, I became aware that I was seeing and hearing spirits and energies again, having visions more, often multiple times a day, including people appearing to me as if they are waiting to interact with me. This is different than when in early life when I felt bad and scared. Back then I saw mostly guides. During a meditation, I realized I was being breathed by a powerful force that was not me. It was the most powerful, loving experience I ever had, like being held in God's arms. A being appeared right in front of me, just their face, eyes closed, a beautiful cobalt blue. Holy, loving presence radiated from this entity. After a few moments, I watched as the entity disappeared. I was dazed, shocked, and amazed, but a part of me was familiar, soothed, and validated, and I wanted to go wherever this being had gone. These experiences set in motion a chain of similar events that went on for years until I willed it to stop because of the overwhelming unworthiness I felt to have these experiences. For the last year, she has been becoming aware of trauma leading to an illness, and through getting involved with evolutionary astrology through Simon Borster, that she had trauma to process. She knows that not everything in growth is flowery, and there's highs ecstatic and lows equally, and I'm used to that. Deep insecurity, shame, compulsion, and worthiness are symptoms of my wounds and shadow. And she wants to help dissolve the stigma attached to mental, emotional health, shame victims, dirty, violated female archetype, and those who experience non-ordinary realities. She's doing a variety of modalities now. It's okay if I just leave it at that. As part of the healing of things that here I'm seeing are both working on the physical level, the emotional level, body level. So in other words, working for the healing of the trauma in all the different ways that it's held in the body. Now, let me get your chart up here. Let's see, here's your, okay. Okay, I'm going to put your natal chart up. Okay. So we see with Gloria, she has a 9th house Pluto and Uranus. She's got Neptune and Scorpio in the 12th house. And these placements say to me that she's very sensitive. She has a Scorpio moon right on her ascendant. And these placements say to me that Gloria is very sensitive and attuned to these kind of 9th house, Pluto, Uranus, attuned to these type of experiences. They're very natural to her. Let's see. Let me shift to the transit. Okay, so we have 18, 19, 22. So you're not having as direct a hit with the Capricorn transits that are going on. I did, I guess I will say from my own experiences, Gloria, that well, actually, I'll share with people something I wrote to Gloria, which is, from my perspective, the unworthiness part is kind of humility that a lot of we spiritual people come in with, the sensitivity, and we just understand how small I am in the scheme of everything, and who am I to be having these experiences, who am I, what am I, and so forth. And what I wrote to Gloria was, nothing can happen that's not intended to happen. It's just not possible. And so, especially with the number and the frequency of the experiences that Gloria has had lifelong. And there's a piece, I would say there's a piece here of accepting the role, that, oh, I see I want to unmute, I'm sorry. I've had you muted, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
It's, in other words, and see where it can go. The wonderful thing about unworthiness and self-denial and all that is that then you hear it like, well, it's like accepting it, and then it can easily go to like, well, I should have been doing this for the last 42 years and I haven't done it, and that just proves that I'm unworthy. And no, we just want to do without that. That's a pattern. You mentioned these are the patterns that we're in, and I know you included yourself in that. I got that. And that's what we're doing. We're waking up out of these patterns. And see, I'll speak this way to you, because with the experiences you had, you'll understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I get clearer and clearer and clearer, that, which is new for me, because I was equally hypnotized, or maybe not as, maybe like, 2% less than but that this entire experience in the body is not at all what we think it is. And it's like we're essentially in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's a script for the movie, and stuff is going to happen. And anything that happens, it doesn't mean that, again, I'm not saying, let's put it this way, that things are happening to me is its own proof that I'm worthy of it. No, you're not supposed to, I'm not saying you have to accept that but it's like, it would not be happening if you weren't worthy of it, because it would be happening to somebody else. From where you came from, maybe you were wishing it happened to somebody else. But it's like life was presenting you with these experiences because life knew you could handle them and understand them. And it's taken all the years of your life until now to be working through the impediments, the patterns, the programming. This is not wrong. This was in the movie script. One of the things I see more and more is that we spiritual and people call them light workers, whatever, that sort of term. We truly, truly, truly want to serve. That's our life purpose. It's our life mission.
Yeah.
And through going through all this junk and feeling all these feelings that all kinds of people feel, but deny, repress, project, we have firsthand experience of what it feels like to feel all this stuff. And as we're working our way through it, we're gaining firsthand experience of how to break those patterns. And with that awareness, with the awareness of the difficulty and the pain and all this that has been involved, this is a source of empathy and compassion for people that you inevitably encounter, that you're 2 steps or 5 steps or 8 steps, whatever, ahead of where they are. Just a few steps. Then you have something to offer them because they're feeling, when they're going through some massive transit, they're feeling just as bad and out of sorts as you ever did. And as you're finding your way through, how do I feel good about myself? I want to talk about the unworthiness just shortly. You have something of value to offer them, which you learned, quote, the hard way. Now, first house, Aries, first house. And you also have a South Node in Aries and a Sun in Aries and a Mercury in Aries, is experiential learning. It's what I call jumping out of the airplane without the parachute and realizing maybe next time I should wear a chute. But when you've done that for decades,
Yeah.
a certain amount of wisdom has been acquired. And then it's the integrating. See, if we go to, in fact, I didn't want to, you talk to me. When you I'm sure you've done this many times, but when you tune into the heart of the part of you that feels the unworthiness, and ask her, what do you need? What does she tell you?
This is real fresh material for me, just so you know. But she needs to be known and loved and taken in like a lost child that I left behind at some point and now found again. So many parts of myself are, you know, that were fractured during times of trauma, that I resisted. That's part of my trauma work right now, is getting to know these parts, and I instantly feel love for them, just like I said, like a small child that I had left behind somehow. And it's a very tearful sort of reunion. Now, some of those some reunions are kind of scary because I have a lot of intensity. I have a lot of big emotions, so it can, you know, be pretty tear-filled experience. But it's that's how it is right now. They come to me in visions. You know, I'm doing this work. I told you about the internal family systems work that sort of facilitates how to do that. And so these parts of myself, as I focus on them, the way I get a sort of a clue that one exists is through the experience of a compulsion or a part of myself that I don't accept very well. And sort of tracking that inwardly is what brings me to that part. And then they eventually sort of appear to me. I'm very visual, so I sort of have a vision of them, and then we go on from there. We go on from there. Does that make sense?
Yes. That's what I mean, I'm becoming clear on that. It is about loving, because these are the parts of us that were not understood,
No.
rejected,
Yes. Even
judged.
hated, even parts of myself that I really hated. There was a lot of, you know, I grew up with a lot of ridicule, and to survive that, I took that on. So I had a lot of self ridicule, and so there's getting past that, and yeah.
But I want to go even back to the original source of it, because like, as you said, you took that on. In other words, that's the way you were treated. Before you treated yourself that way,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
the way you were treated.
Yeah.
And that's the original wound.
It is. Mm-hmm.
And because these are the parts of ourself that were innocent little children,
Yes.
very sensitive little
Yeah.
children that were not understood, rejected, ridiculed, and, you know, I don't know what your history is, but some people have it even worse than that.
Yes.
And so, yes, we took it on. In other words, if you were, let's say you were ridiculed for saying you were having experiences, just as an example. I don't know if that happened, but let's use an example. So if you know that someone is likely to ridicule you for having experiences that to you are as real and normal as brushing your teeth, then how likely am I to want to go telling everyone about it?
I know. I hid it all my life. I hid it till I was 52 years old. I never told a soul. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, the beautiful thing is that because life essentially, you know, put you here, or you took on the role to carry these energies. And life does not have one tiny little judgment on you that it took 52 years for you to come to that place with yourself. Because that being that you met that was so loving, that's a reflection of how life feels about you and all of us.
Thank you for saying that. That's so beautiful to hear. And it really was validated for me. I actually went to my EMDR therapy today, and I hadn't told my therapist of the blue one. I call him the blue one. I told her of that experience, and we actually used it. We used the experience of the blue one to envelop and heal this core of shame and darkness that I carry in this area here in myself. And it was a very wonderful experience. And so it was really validating, because I'd heard that from you in an email, and then she said, used almost the exact same words. So it's very validating for me to hear that from her today. So
And that's how
yeah.
Karen, with what you were saying about you're having that burst of energy at the same time as your son. And here, Gloria's getting the same message from two different sources within a week.
Mm-hmm.
It just works like this.
It does.
That's what I'm finding as I get more and more synced into how it actually works.
Mm-hmm.
Because life is so on our side and so appreciating all that we go through. I mean, everybody, but all that we go through, representing something that's different, representing something that's coming. What we feel is the future for this planet. It is going to occur. We can't say when, we can't say what's going to happen before it occurs, but it's absolutely going to occur. It's the destiny. And we carry little pieces of this, and we each have our little roles, and our own healing is part of that process. Because what I've learned from my healing helps others. And what you'll, as you're continuing in this self-love, because that's like the, I mean, when I started that self-love practice, it felt embarrassing to parts of me. This is the nature of the conditioned reality that we live in. That's what I started saying about the movie, that this reality is so not. I mean, you know, we think it's a three-dimensional reality, and you're born and you die and all this heavy stuff comes and you try to have a nice life and all this. And yet there are those of us that's not fulfilling for, because that's not why we're here. And it doesn't, I'm not saying you can't have a marriage and you can't have kids, but I'm saying when you're coming from this place, the nature of that marriage is going to be different than what it is for most people, because it's not really about ourself.
No.
It's not about our own pleasure. But it's an opportunity to accelerate the learning and the facing ourselves.
Yes.
And that's the perspective of the soul. And that's the type, it's the awareness of that, and people that can hold, that share that vision, that perspective, that yearning, are the ones I feel that we're intended to draw closer to. And people who can hold that and who ridicule or shame, if you're still having those experiences, I don't know. But we're not intended to be putting a lot of energy in that direction.
No.
I can love them and know that they're in a place in their own healing where they're not ready yet to be able to hold those energies. And so it's like, thank you. I'm not mad at you. But this is not a place that is the right place for me to be putting my energy.
Yes. So true.
And, you know, often enough, this occurs in families, because it's another thing Richard Bach wrote in that book was, rarely are the members of a soul family born under the same roof.
Yeah, that's so true. Yes, I am not, most of my family, my siblings especially, did not come through all of the horrors of my childhood as well as I did. So
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And
But
I needed to let go of my mother and my father both. It was just too toxic for me.
yes.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is a lot
Mhm.
for anyone. Yes. But this is, you know, I also, I don't know, I'm going to wind this down, but I honor, to me, it takes a tremendous amount of courage for anybody and everybody to walk this path, to be willing to feel these things, to be willing to face these things, to be willing to talk about these things. I find it amazingly courageous. And I honor your efforts and everyone else here who resonates with what I'm talking about, because it's a lot. And we do this out of love. There's really no other reason to do it.
Yeah. I do that for love. I appreciate what you're doing and really appreciated the other stories that we heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
So I am back August 4th, I think. And I have 3 hours. I'm not sure what I'm going to do in 3 hours, but maybe a lot more charts. I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but it will be another, you know, this is what I talk about. So from different perspectives. And I appreciate all of you coming. It's heartwarming to me that I'm getting a response from people that are finding value from the perspective that I'm presenting, because this is what I want to do, you know, from here on.
It's great. Yeah.
So thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.